Well, I want to thank everybody for attending today's Life Weekly, our discussion every Monday morning we have here at Premier Life and Annuities. My name is Mark Landholm. I'm a marketer here for the traditional life insurance division here at Premier Life and Annuities. I'll be one of the hosts today for our story time. Is today's theme, Tall Tales for Tall Sales. With us today will be the Regional Vice President of National Life Group, Mike Zimmeretti. And don't feel bad, we always call him Big Mike. Big Mike, how are you today?
I'm great, Mark. Thank you for inviting me today.
I'm glad that you survived the 4th of July weekend, like all our agents that are on board here today. So, Mike, we're going to start talking about prospecting and marketing and some of the things that the agents need to do over the summer. So I'll just turn it right over to you and get started.
Well, thank you, Mark. And again, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to reality. Mark and I were chuckling earlier. It was like a taste of retirement when we woke up Monday morning, except the reality slapped us in the face that we had to go to work. That's what happens every time you have a long weekend. But I hope everyone had a safe one and had a truly enjoyable weekend. Tall tales. Sometimes when you hear the word tall tales, you think of, well, there's a story that's been significantly embellished over the years to make it juicier and more appetizing and exciting than maybe it really was. But what I'm going to share with you today is a story, an industry-related story that I think that will serve multiple purposes for you, and I'm sure it'll bring into mind maybe something you have seen in your career or has happened to you in your practice, or feel free to reference this story and use my name. I mean, it's fine. But, I've been in this business over 25 years. I came from a professional sports background, and then I was an agent for a while, and I really respect, because of that, I respect and I know how hard you work out there, and prospecting is tough. It's tough in the toughest of times. It's tough in the easiest of times. It's never easy. So at the conclusion of this call, I have furnished Premier Life and Annuity with some excellent target marketing brochures of how to go out and target particular types of clients. Also, a tremendous leave behind client piece that you as an agent can leave with your client that is aimed at motivating your clients a tad bit, and it's kind of a value proposition of what you're offering, so to speak. So let's get into the story, because I've told this story. I'd like a nickel for every time I've told this story, because it was so impactful and it related to me. So let's just get into the story, and I'll let you see for yourself how impactful this truly is. About 2 years ago, I was introduced to a Tampa. I'm based in Tampa, Florida, and I was introduced to a Tampa-based agent who went out to lunch with me several times, and we got to be good friends. And he was introduced me through an IMO in the Clearwater, Florida area. So we got together a few times, and we talked about the National Life LSW life portfolio and the living benefit story, and the trials and tribulations of getting in front of clients and getting them to take action, actually, get the app and then eventually write the check. It's not all that easy, as we know. So as we proceed with this particular story, the agent called me and said, I've got this attorney in Tampa. I'd like you to meet him sometime. Maybe we can go to lunch or happy hour or something. He's 58 years old, and he's in great shape, great health, and he has a small, thriving real estate practice. And I've been talking to him about life insurance for 2-3 years. And I think I could really get him off the fence with your IUL living benefit story and cash accumulation for his retirement. So I said, fantastic, I'd love to meet him. And as they say, long story made short, this agent called me back and said, Mike, no need to meet him. He's a busy guy. He's all over the place, but I'm having some difficulty in getting him off the fence. I showed him an IUL illustration, putting in $15,000 to $20,000 a year, and he loved it. He was ready to get going, and then, when we had our secondary appointment to take the app, he gave me that look and said, well, I talked to my wife, and, business has been up and down. I'm a one-man operation with a secretary in my office, and $15,000 to $20,000 a year commitment might put me under the gun, particularly because I have 2 kids in college and they still have a year or 2 left. Once the kids are out of college, I really want to do this. So the agent, taking a cue from myself, because sometimes we see these things coming, these objections. How do we overcome objections like this? Well, very simply, I said counter with our term offerings. We have a 10, 15, 20, and 30-year level term that also offers living benefits. And the beauty of that is you're going to lock in this client's insurability. In this case, this was a male age 58, preferred non-smoker, and that's pretty hard to come by. Once you're 58, 60, it's hard to get those preferred ratings all the time, as we all know. So the client looked at it and said, well, that's a little bit more expensive than regular term. And he said, well, the reason it is, it's got the living benefits, but also National Life LSW is one of the few companies that actually allow you to convert to any of their permanent products at the time of conversion. Usually, most companies have a significantly watered-down product, and I'm being polite when I say that, to convert to, because they know they're being selected against, and they know they got the client pinned to the wall, so the offering is pretty weak. Ours is significant, and the client loved it. He goes, well, that's great. I'll take out the term for $1 million. I'll take a 10-year term. I got 10 years to convert it, but I'll certainly do that before then. And we took it out for $1 million, and he was happy with the living benefit story. So about 6 to 7 months went by, and I'm doing my thing as a wholesaler, and all of a sudden the phone rings, and there's my agent in Tampa, and we're going back and forth a little bit, catching up, and he says, well, Mike, the reason I called you, I've got some bad news. My Tampa attorney friend, remember that guy we sold the term? I said, yeah. He said he died 3 weeks ago, and I'm just now calling you, and I'm apologizing. Your company's going to get a significant claim to the tune of $1 million. And I said, well, don't worry about that. It's reinsured, and that's what we do. But I'm really shocked. May I ask what happened to your attorney friend? He goes, yes, it was a boating accident, Mike. It was unbelievable, out of left field. Him and his family were in Siesta Key, Florida, and with some neighbors, and they were on a boat enjoying the weekend, kind of like the 4th of July weekend. But I think this was probably in March or April, and it was just a sad story. And then the bottom line was they were having difficulty getting the anchor free, and they both started tugging on the rope or the chain, and the attorney lost his balance, struck his head on the hull of the boat, slipped under the water, and they couldn't find him in the murky water, and he drowned. Very sad story, but as why I've been invited to tell this story, let's really get into what happened. And I always like to tell people in my profession, 2 things happen when bad news happens. There's the emotional wave, where people either deal with death, disability, or a significant event, but it's slowly followed by the financial wave. And that's what this agent had to do. He took care of the grief by attending the funeral, talking to the family, and then pulled the wife aside and said, I'm going to call you in about 3 weeks to take care of business, and we'll take care of his life insurance. I'm going to need some documents, so I'll contact you in a while. So when he thought it was appropriate, he called her back and said, I'm going to need 3 documents. I'm going to need a death certificate, I'm going to need the Coast Guard report, and I'm going to need the sheriff's coroner's report. So when he went to the house to collect these documents and have her sign the claim form for the $1 million of the term, she was very cold to him and very upset, but in a different way. It had nothing to do with the grief. So when he sat down with her and they started their dialogue, he just called her out and said, I feel this incredible coldness between us. Something's wrong. What is it? She said, well, I had to hire a probate attorney today because I don't know what you were doing with your financial planning for my late husband, but he had no will or trust in place. And I'm ready to have a nervous breakdown because I don't know if you're aware of this, but I'm his second wife. His first wife has 2 children with him, and he verbally had promised the family that if anything ever happened to him, the proceeds from the business would be, the business would be sold, and the proceeds would, in part, be delegated to the 2 children to cover future educational costs, and of course to the ex-wife. The ex-wife also asked the current wife, point blank, at the funeral, was there any life insurance in place, and how much did he leave to me and his children? So you could see where we're going with this, and the agent, of course, was getting really in a queasy position because he said, well, you know, he told me he had all that taken care of. She goes, well, he told me he had it all taken care of as well, but I guess he lied or misled both of us. But here's the point. The probate attorney wanted your card, and he wants your name, and he's going to call you and ask you what kind of financial planning you did for my husband by not having a succession plan in place for a business owner. You started part of that succession plan by putting this life insurance in place, but this probate attorney wants to know why the life insurance wasn't in a trust and why you didn't ask to see a trust, or was there a will, and did you have the business valuated, all these things that a professional should have done. So the agent, of course, knew here comes an E&O claim for sure, and this is going to be you know, a tough situation to plow through. So he's plowing through that as we speak, and I haven't spoken to him recently because he had some health issues of his own to address. So I don't know where he is with that. However, here's the moral to the story. He did call me sometime after that and said, Mike, this story has impacted my business in a very positive way, other than me looking over my shoulder and wondering what's going to happen with this E&O claim, because I was empowered. I went back to my book of business, and I don't know if you know how I created my book of business, but back in the day, I knocked on business owners' doors, cold called all of them, and sold them health insurance. And then I went back and I started selling life, disability, annuities, IRAs, Roths, all sorts of things. So what I did, Mike, I told this story. I called all of my business owners, or I went to see them face to face, and I basically told them I was on a mission. And my mission was that I told them the story, and I said, this is never going to happen to me again as a professional. I'm never going to get caught with my pants down. So he did a survey of all of his clients, and he said, Michael, 70% of all the business owners that he had relationships with had no succession plan in place. They had no will, no trust. They had no idea what their business was worth. And do you know what these business owners said to this agent? They said, what an incredible story. How sad. That sounds like me. If I died today, that sounds like me. I'm so busy running my business that I haven't had time to take care of the business end of the business in terms of my family, in terms of succession. And that also includes retirement, not just a bad ending of an accidental death, but truly sitting down and saying, well, am I going to live off of the proceeds and retirement of this business? I better evaluate it and see what the future holds for this. And also, if I ever want to sell the business, what would I sell it for? So what this agent did was he entered into a partnership with a CPA and a local attorney and offered a package. And the CPA is going to evaluate all the businesses that come to the table, and the attorney is going to write up the trust and the wills, or just the trust, and they're going to look at putting the life insurance into an ILIT or some different advanced planning. But certainly by taking the succession plan and evaluating the business and evaluating the circumstances. The agent had no idea that there was an ex-spouse involved with 2 young kids. So obviously the fact-finding process wasn't as tight, but let me tell you folks on the call today, you're as good as the information your clients choose to share with you, and sometimes it's like pulling teeth, and sometimes clients just either overlook it or they purposely just don't want you to know that part of their life. And our job is to probe and do the fact-finding, and Mark, you know as well as I do, we pride ourselves on a lot of fact-finding material at the National Life Group, so that, is always available to everyone. So I guess, that in essence is my story. So let's summarize what this story served to do for this particular agent and why I'm on this call with you today. Real life stories, particularly in this industry, serve as an incredible call to action. It serves to motivate prospective clients. We always have those terms, what's the difference between a suspect and a prospect? But in my mind, it doesn't matter. If they're sitting on the fence and you're not getting an app and you're not getting a check, they're really not a client. They're just a person you talk to. So I feel that the power of a real life story disturbs clients sufficiently, but gently and discreetly. There's a lot of discretion in telling a third-party story. And what are you trying to get out of telling that? Well, you're doing a service to your client because you're telling them a real-life story that happened to someone that did not plan properly and perhaps never thought about that financial wave that would come after the emotional wave. So the bottom line, folks, is that the story is a reaction, and the reaction is, boy, that sounds like me. And what you're really trying to get the client to look you in the eye and say, Mr. or Miss Agent, what do you think I should be doing? I sound like that guy in that story. Can you sit down with me and help me out, because I don't want to put my family or myself in that type of a predicament. So, Mark, I'm going to kick it back to you. You told me to be short and sweet. I hope that hit all the points we were trying to make today with our tall tale. But again, this was a real life story. And in conclusion, when I first got into this business, I was with a debit company. I had two situations that were not as impactful as this, but they involved people that did not buy life insurance from me when I knocked on doors and presented my business card and called them and called them and called them, and I found out later they had passed away, one in a car accident and one in a scuba diving accident. So these things happen. It's called real life, and you know, when I was new and young in the business, I thought these stories were kind of tacky and corny and, oh, I'll never use that tactic. I'm going to be much more professional. But now that I'm 25 plus years into this business and I look back, boy, what a, you know, I should have been using stories as a call to action. So, Mark, back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mike. I think that's a very appropriate story for this weekend. You know, there were a lot of voting. There is things we just don't expect things to happen in life. Life goes on, and accidents do happen, and we just never know when that moment happens. I think one of the questions or statements I got here from a couple of agents on the list says an insurance agent is not a financial planner. Sounds like the CPA and attorney probably blew that case, but yet, you know, a financial planner, life insurance agent is one of those steps. Can you just kind of address that?
Yeah, well, you know what? Thank you. That's a great comment, and I'm glad someone out there asked that, because I have to be careful. I'm a straightforward to the point guy, and when I talk about the power of what National Life offers with living benefits, people look at me and say, Mike, is this just company smoke? Is this just fluff? This living benefit thing that you guys have been doing for a long time? It's, well, no, it's phenomenal because it creates a conversation. It creates yet another dynamic to make a client pause and think about planning for themselves, their future, their family. And it's a dynamic story. Where I find people not using our products that get frustrated, and please excuse the expression, I call them product peddlers. They seize on a product for either commission or some kind of a cheap you know, lure that the product has, a hook that the product has, and they run with that all day long until another product comes along with a better hook, and they feel like they've accomplished something. And I think that's what some people were, maybe in this case with this agent, he was guilty of product peddling. He basically went out and was happy to have sold his client slash friend some life insurance. And the fact that he had $1 million term, he felt that was significant. And in my mind, you know, I wasn't going to criticize the agent, but $1 million for a business owner is not a lot of coverage. And if you would have probed deeper into the situation, you would have seen that there was an ex-wife with some children, and there was a lineage to protect there. So the planning, I agree. So there's product peddling, and then there's planning. And the way to get into planning is through the fact-finding process and telling stories, asking questions, asking a lot of questions. And that's why I like this story, or any kind of a story, because there's two ways to approach clients in my mind. You approach them directly and say, Mark, do you have this in place? And do you have that? And what are you doing? Are you working with a financial services professional currently? And one of the most incredible fact-finding questions that kind of shocked me when I reviewed our fact finders was a question directly aimed at the client. What are your thoughts about life insurance? That's a stimulating, pointed question. So that's the first way to do it directly. The second way is through third party. I work with a lot of business owners and financial professionals, and what I do for them is, and these are the things that come up in the conversations, and this is what I feel your pain as a business owner, Mr. Business Owner. I know what keeps you up at night. I work with your contemporaries out there all day long, and these are the things they are doing. So there's different ways to approach it, third party, directly, telling a story. But I hope that answers the question. I think you got people, and you know what, I'm going to tell you, and I'll be right on record with it. I think you have tremendous competitive advantage by getting out into the marketplace right now and going in and asking to review people's programs because they're outdated, things have changed. I mean, think about how quickly life changes day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. People get divorced, they die, they remarry, they have children. There's illnesses, there's changes all over the place, changes in professions, changes in tax laws. Gosh, back in 2008, people would slam a door in your face if you went out and talked the words 401k. They were calling it a 101k, and we saw the demise in the annuity world of lower rates and lower caps and lower interest rates. So nobody really is out there talking to these business owners. And if I was a coach, which I am, I think, as a wholesaler, I would say get out there and knock on those doors, or go back to your book of business and say, I'm here to talk to you about your succession planning. Tell me 2 key words. All you have to do is basically say, tell me about your business, and be quiet and listen to them talk. It's no different than being in the senior market and talking to a senior and looking around the room and looking at all the pictures of the family and say, tell me about your family. 2 hours later, you pretty much, have heard a lot about the family. But in the business world, the business owners love to talk about their businesses. And then the second question would merely be, tell me what keeps you up at night. What disturbs you as a business owner? And what planning have you taken action with to curb some of these dire consequences that keep you up at night and are concerned? And that's where I think, not just the fact-finding process, but then also gently bringing in, if somebody says, well, I'll tell you how I feel about life insurance. I have a bunch, thank you. My next-door neighbor was an agent. He's retired now, and I have quite enough. Well, do you own the old kind or the new kind? Well, what do you mean? Well, there's a new kind of life insurance out there. There's life insurance with living benefits. There's also tax-free income that could be guaranteed for life. Instead of taking a regular loan, you could take a lifetime income benefit rider loan, pay a few basis points, and have it guaranteed for life. Really? Well, I didn't know about all that. Maybe you should sit down and review my insurance program. And, of course, this is all predicated on the clients being still insurable. I always coach people and say, before you really get into this stuff, one of your biggest hurdles is to assess a client's insurability, because once you tell the story, particularly the living benefit story, and they get all fired up and excited, and then you get to the application phase and you find out, oh my gosh, this person has significant health history, and we just can't do it. Mark, any other questions? Sorry, I kind of belabored that one.
You bet. No, and that brings up that point, the key point in life insurance. It's never too early. You need to get after your business owners while they are young and healthy, and when they're not thinking about it, but you're reminding of it. So that's
well, Mark, one of the big things that came out of this story when I talked to the agent, he was really excited. He said, when I sat down with the CPA and said, I need a CPA to do some fairly inexpensive valuations, because valuations can cost upwards of $15,000 to $3,000, $4,000, depending on the size of the business, maybe more. This is a great way to co-op with a CPA or attorney, and do some financial planning. But he was really excited because most business owners had no idea. They never stopped to think, if they had to sell the business today, or they died yesterday and their family had to sell the business today, they had no idea what it was worth. What would they ask for it? What would you put it up for sale? It's kind of like your home. And a lot of real estate agents did that. They would knock on doors and say, do you have any idea what your home is worth in this rising real estate market? That always piques curiosity. So I think that just beckons.
All right, Mike. Well, I thank you. We don't seem to have any other questions right now.
Great. Okay.
Want to remind the agents that we do have those questionnaires and fact-finding articles and guides for agents, not only for the individual insurance, but with the business insurance in mind, including each phases of that business, you know, and how to hone in on key man and bonuses and buyout and everything else. I think one of the strengths of National Life Group and LSW is the marketing and assistance materials and the guides the agents have access to. It's a fantastic company to work with, and Premier is proud to be associated with them. So with that, we'd like to thank everybody for being on the webinar. Those that have questions and would like the handouts, please give us a call here at Premier at 800-365-8208 and just ask for a life insurance marketer in the traditional life insurance side. You'll get somebody on Kathy's team, or Kathy or myself, and we can assist you and get you started on that marketing and increasing your business. So Mike, again, thank you for partaking and telling us that story, and we'll look forward to everybody next week on Life Weekly here at Premier next Monday at 10 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.